Hey guys, I'm Mary and welcome back to my channel. A little bit of a long time no see, as I had a unintended break because a tree fell at my house and knocked out our water and gas for 2 weeks. Well, water only for a few days, gas for 2 weeks. So we've been dealing with that and I ended up not filming when I normally would have because of that. So I'm back, hopefully. It feels like every time I get into a good groove with filming, something happens. So hopefully we're back in the groove, and today I'm bringing you a slightly belated March wrap up. So in the month of March, I read 15 total books. I had an average rating of just a flat 4-star, even. Great. And then from my impression looking at this list, I think this is my most diverse month as far as number of genres read in one month, because I read across 8 genres. So I read 5 fantasy, 3 romance, 2 historical fiction, 1 mystery, 1 nonfiction, 1 sci-fi, 1 horror, and 1 just fiction, like general fiction book. So let's get started with those. So I'm going to structure my wrap up a little differently than normal and switch it up and do my lowest rated to highest rated, which I used to do and then I stopped doing, and now I'm kind of feeling that again. So I'm going to start with my lowest rated, and then within each star, they're not ranked against each other. Like the 3 stars are not ranked against each other. It's just, I'll start with my 3 stars because that was my lowest of the month, and then go up, and then within each star, it's just the order I read those. So that being said, we're going to start with, as I said, the 3 stars. And so the fact that the 3 stars is my lowest is pretty good. I didn't hate anything I read last month. That's good to have, a lowest being a 3-star. And of the 3 stars, I had 4 of them. The first 3-star I read was The School for Good Mothers by Jessamine. This is the one general fiction book I read, and so this takes place in kind of this near future setting. I think it's supposed, I don't remember if it's actually dated, but it definitely feels like it's supposed to be only like within 5 years from now. And it is about, in this new 5 years from now world, CPS, which is the Child Protective Services in America, has kind of revamped their methods for what they do when a parent has done wrong or been reported or something, and as far as how they handle that. And so in this book, what they do is they send these parents who've been reported and found to be bad into like a trial to the School for Good Mothers. It's kind of like a rehab, or fathers. They're gender separated at school. So in this book, we primarily go to the School for Good Mothers. So it's kind of like a rehab, re-education center almost, where they split all the mothers based on what age their child is and kind of start doing all these different classes over the course of the year to like re-educate them, and they have to like pass all these classes to be approved at the end to be able to see their child again. And so our main character is a mother who's just been divorced, and her husband just left her for his mistress, and so she's been struggling to be a single parent. And one day when she is watching her daughter, who I think is about 2, in that range, she leaves her daughter home alone for about 2 hours while the mom runs into work to like get some papers and comes back. She's she's tired, stressed, overworked, and she just kind of slips her mind that her child is at home, and nothing bad happens to the child while she's gone. But the fact that she left her home alone was enough that she got reported and sentenced to the school. So I'm going to say something that I never in my life thought I would say about a book, which is, this should have been a novella. I think I would have really, really liked this more if it had been a novella, because we started out really strong. I was really intrigued by the school, about kind of like the method with which they do re-education, because it's kind of eerie in a way, and just kind of a lot of the narrative talking about kind of, you see this divide between like parents who did worse things than the other parents who didn't do things as bad. There's like kind of tiers, and you definitely kind of see that in how they treat each other. It's like, oh, well, I didn't do something as bad as that person did. And it was really interesting, but it just got repetitive through the middle of the book, and that's why I think it just would have worked as a novella. Like, we didn't need to see every unit being taught in the book. It kind of just started following, it was like a cycle of, okay, new unit, they struggle, they kind of figure it out, someone fails, someone passes, okay, no, new unit, and just kind of just got repetitive. And I just like don't really think you needed it. Like, it was a little different in that they were doing new units, but you just didn't need it for like the impact it was going for, and it just made the book kind of long. And the book really wasn't that long. It was like 330 pages or something. So this one I do think could have been a great novella and just didn't need to be drawn out into a full-length novel. I also didn't love the ending. it just felt a little lackluster for what it felt like the whole book was building up towards. And again, I think if it had been a novella, I would have spent less time feeling as if the book was building to something and would have probably had lower expectations for the ending. But so, definitely an interesting book. Definitely glad I did pick it up. A little different than what I usually read, but not a total winner in my book. So, my next 3-star read of the month was The Family by Naomi Kruptisky. This is a historical fiction following these 2 girls who grow up neighbors, and their dads are members of the local mafia in New York City, and I think it starts in like the 20s? When does it start? Yeah, 20, so it starts in the late 20s when they're probably about 6, and then it goes until they themselves are married and adults with their own children. And as far as like the overarching plot of this story, I did enjoy this, like seeing how these 2 girls grew up and evolved, like their relationships with each other evolved, their relationships with like their husbands, their relationships with their family, with the family as they refer to the mafia in this book. And it was definitely interesting kind of seeing like the mirrors of when they were kids to kind of the situation their kids were in. However, the middle, okay. And then I also thought the beginning and end themselves were both very interesting and definitely pulled me in. However, the middle, I just kind of lost steam, and something about the writing style just made me feel very detached from our main characters, so I never really cared about the main characters. This was definitely when I like, the plot is what hooked me. And then when the plot kind of lost a little steam, I wasn't really into the characters for a while, so definitely lost steam in the middle there. And I think I just wanted more mafia. Like, I think there had been more mafia in the middle of the book, would have been better. But definitely wish there had been more mafia in this one. So, unfortunately, just okay. Again, good and bad, but not my favorite. Next, I read A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay, and this was a trip. This was my one horror read for the month, and this is an exorcism story told through the point of view of an 8-year-old. So the 8-year-old is not the one possessed. It's her older sister, who's a teenager, who's possessed, and the exorcism is being done on her. And we see the story told primarily through the 8-year-old's eyes, but also we have some chapters of like present day, when the 8-year-old is now an adult, telling her story to like a reporter. And so then the 8-year-old perspective is like her telling the story. So this was a trip. I think the thing is, I think exorcism stories might just work better for me in like a movie. That being said, I have never seen an exorcism movie, so I could just be totally making that up. But I just like got impatient waiting for the exorcism part. It was like I didn't know what it was about, and so I just kind of got impatient waiting for that part of the book to finally happen. I was like, all right, when are we gonna get there? When are we gonna get there? All the stuff building up to it was initially interesting, but kind of just lost me. That's the theme so far of these first 3 books, is the middle losing steam. So here we are. But yeah, so I think maybe an exorcism movie where you literally aren't waiting as long for it to happen, because the movie's only 2 hours, whereas reading this book took probably 6 or 7 hours. It wasn't a super long book. So I just literally spent more time waiting for it to happen. And I just like got kind of bored waiting for it. So it was, other than that though, it was very weird. It definitely creeped me out in several points. It didn't like, scare is a weird word, because the only times I really get scared are usually like jump scare stuff in movies, and obviously it's not really going to happen in a book, but it definitely did really creep me out, so points for that. Also, I think I might have enjoyed it more if I had seen or read any kind of like classic horror, classic exorcism stories, because there were a lot of callbacks to those that I just didn't pick up on because I am not familiar. Like, I've heard of these movies like Rosemary's Baby and like The Exorcism and stuff, but I've just never seen and know any of the details of them, so. And then the last 3-star book of the month was one I am very sad is a 3-star. Of the 4 3-stars, this is the one I'm the most sad about, and that was A Wizard of Ursi by Ursula K. LeGuin. It makes me sad when I pick up a classic, like a fantasy classic, and just don't like it, like really all that much. It was fine. I've never left a book feeling so nothing about it. And it feels so harsh. Like, I didn't even particularly dislike it. Like, there's nothing in this book that I can point to being like, I didn't like that character. It was just like, it just like went in my eyes, and then I moved on. And I kind of have no opinion of it. Like, this is a horrible review because I just really have no feelings on it. Like, it was fine. It happened. I'm glad I picked it up. Because now I know. You know, I tried it. Gave it a shot. I don't regret giving it a shot, but I just like don't have any strong thoughts. It was fine. There we are. My first 4-star of the month was Disfigured by LeDuc. This is a nonfiction book about disability in fairy tales. And so I had heard this praised by several other channels, so I needed a science fiction fantasy nonfiction to round out my fantasy bingo board for the year. So I was like, let's give it a shot. And I enjoyed this. I feel like I learned a lot about this, both from the point of view of I literally just learned things about fairy tales. Like, she used fairy tales as examples I never heard of, so I just kind of learned more about fairy tales and about the history of fairy tales themselves. I also learned more about kind of disability, kind of, I guess, as a concept in America, like, or in North America, because I believe this author might be Canadian, but either way, I learned more about kind of disability and like terms that the disability community uses in referring to themselves, or just kind of like policies and social norms around it, and I thought that was really interesting. And then it definitely shone a different light on a lot of fairy tales in the way I just, again, had never thought of. Like, I am not disabled. I don't have any close family or friends that are disabled, so it's just not something I'm really exposed to naturally in my day-to-day life. And I thought it was really interesting. I also really liked how the author brought in her personal anecdotes, because she has cerebral palsy, and so she brought in a lot of personal anecdotes to kind of tie to her analysis and kind of her, like, I just think having those personal examples made her points about, when you read this, if you're disabled, it makes you often will make you feel this way, or like have this negative impact, because seeing her personal anecdote, and again, anecdotes are different for everyone, but seeing them, it's like really drove home, oh, that really does affect you that way. Like, I don't know, something about having like the personal example really just, I think, drove the points home harder, from more of a theoretical to like a more tangible example. And so yeah, I enjoyed this. It was very interesting. I would definitely recommend it if you're looking for some kind of fantasy related nonfiction to read. Next was my first reread of the month, and that was The Fires of Heaven by Robert Jordan. Yes, I am holding up a cover with no book behind it. If you've been watching my wrap-ups recently, you've been seeing my really, really shitty editions of the Wheel of Time books. I truly do not know how this happened to them. They're all kind of in this state up through book 6, because that's all these ones I've read. Only one of them do I actually know how it got in that state. I don't know what to say. I swear I don't treat all my books this way, but so, Fires of Heaven. Oops. This was the first book, I feel like, on my reread that I truly went into being like, what the heck happened in this book? And I did get to some things, I was like, okay, that's right, I remember this now. But this is the first one where I started and was like, I have literally no idea what's about to happen in this book, despite knowing that I've read it. And I enjoyed it. It was another solid entry in this book. I think at this point, The Dragon Reborn still holds my favorite spot so far of the books. We'll see how long that holds once I start getting to the newer books. And really my primary thought leaving this book is Rand just needs to like frickin' get over himself and stop being so misogynist. Like, the boy cannot. I texted my friend about this, who's read the whole series multiple times, and she was like, I'm sorry to inform you, it gets worse before it gets better. And I was just like, ugh. So anyways, that being said, still enjoyed it, and I am still looking forward to rereading the last two before I get to the new ones. The next book I read was The Midnight Star by Marie Lu. This is the finale to the Young Elite trilogy, and it was a very solid ending to the series, and this book took the story in a direction that I was not expecting. So, like, kudos to that for really 180ing where I thought this whole story was going to go. And she did a really good job, I thought, of wrapping up all of the main storylines, all the character arcs throughout this trilogy. Really just, she really stuck the landing is pretty much what I'm saying here. This is a really solid YA fantasy series. Also, this is now the second trilogy I've finished by her. This one, and then I read the Champions trilogy when it first came out, excluding Rebel, which is kind of like a fourth standalone published years later. The ending of both of these trilogies really hit a bittersweet ending. And like Marie Lu, I don't know if this is just her thing. I don't know if she does this in her other series, because I know she has 2 other series I haven't read. But she really hits those bittersweet endings, and she does them well. I don't know if I said like them, because like I like happy endings, but she does them well. So next, I read The Lost Plot by Genevieve Cogman. This is the 4th book in the Invisible Library series, which is an episodic kind of world-hopping, time, era-hopping kind of adventure series about a librarian who is picking up like kind of rare and important books to store in this like magical in between dimensions library. And so I think this was my favorite since the first book. And I think largely that's because in this world we have two main magical entities, the dragons who are on the order side, and then the Fae who are on the chaos side. Like, order to chaos is like a whole spectrum, and they're on either end. And books 2 and 3 were more focused on the Fae storylines, and this one was much more focused on the dragons. And I think I just like the dragons better. So I liked this one better than the other two, because this one focuses on two dragons who are in this political contest, and the library ends up getting unwittingly thrown into the middle of it, and Irene goes off to try to help pull the library out of it so they are not implicated, because it's against the library's like rule of law to get involved in Fae and dragon affairs, and if they are found out, they'll be big trouble. So I really like this one. And also this one went to a 1920s Prohibition era world, which I also had a good time in. So enjoyed this one, and I'm looking forward to moving on in this series. Next, I read a historical romance, Brazen the Beast by Sarah MacLean. This is the second book in her Bare Knuckle Bastard series. You'll hear about the first book later in this video. So this series follows three siblings who are the Bare Knuckle Bastards, who are kind of the leaders, the king and queen of the underbelly of London, and they're each of their love stories. So in the second one, we're following Wit, also known as Beast, and his roommates with Hattie. And so they meet when Hattie gets into her carriage one night, and Beast is tied up and unconscious on the floor, and she like sets him free, and like he's now intrigued by her. And so she's this woman who wants to take over her father's business because she's good at it and knows how to, but her father was going to hand it to her brother for literally no other reason than he's a man, as it was in the times, and Hattie, however, is much more competent than her brother, so she's trying really hard to get her dad to hand it over to her so she can like keep it running. And she's starting off this book kind of deciding to start off on her birthday, a new year. She's now officially a spinster. She's putting all her effort into this business. And so then when she runs into Wit, they kind of end up, entangled in business as well. And it's their story. And so I liked this book. I really liked Hattie's character and kind of her desire to take over her family's business. It's not the first historical romance I've read with that as like a plot line in it. And I enjoy those. I enjoy the women wanting to run the shit. I'm here for that. And however, the trope that started this one just isn't my favorite. It was like a sex deal trope, and I'm just like not as into that. It's because there's like a nuance here where if the sex deal is like, I will give you my virginity in exchange for you doing something for me, I don't like that. If the sex pact is more like, I'm making a deal with you because I want you to teach me how to be good at sex, I like those kind of tropes. They're nuanced, they're related to each other, but they're different. And one of them is used in book 1, and the one I like less is used in book 2. So I didn't like the setup as much in this one, and I thought they were a good couple together, but overall it just wasn't like fall in love new favorite. Next, I read Miracle Creek by Angie Kemp. This is a courtroom drama about a family in rural Virginia that runs a hyperbaric treatment center, which is like this big metal capsule, that's the word, capsule that you like get in, and it like does something with the oxygen, like pipes in it, like more oxygenated air, and it's supposed to like help heal things. Clearly, I don't totally understand the science, and it's been, a few weeks since I've read this one, but so in this book, there was an explosion by the capsule during one like the rounds of treatment, and 2 people end up dying, a kid and their mother. So during this group, there's like 4 patients, all of which have varying different illnesses, like it's not all the same, and 3 of them are kids, and so it's the 3 kids, the 3 parents, and then the 1 adult. So 7 people in there. 2 of them die, and other of them have other different injuries and stuff. And so it's the courtroom drama unfolding around this case of who caused the fire, whether it was kind of, negligence on the family, or whether it was or whether like the oxygen was lit from outside. And I really enjoyed this. It's told from lots of point of views, from different people, from family members, from the patients, from other people, and you really don't know who did it. Like, I feel like I had like 5 theories. It's really interesting to kind of watch the story unfold. Like, you see some clues in early chapters, and then later you're like, they connect them in like ways you don't expect. You're like, ooh. So I thought this was an impulsively readable book because I like could not put it down because I just like needed to know what happened. And overall, I definitely really liked it. I've heard someone question. So I've heard a question whether the autism rep in this book is good because two of the patients who are being treated are two kids with, I believe, somewhat severe levels of autism. Or I'm sorry. Okay. Because two of the kids being treated are two kids with autism, and I know I've seen some people critique that it seems like this book is taking a stance that autism is curable and it must be cured and there's no other way, but I didn't really read it that way. I read it as those two parents maybe viewed that, but I didn't necessarily read it as the book itself taking that stance. It kind of seemed logical to me that if the whole operation is about curing illnesses, and obviously the people that use it are going to be on the side of this must be cured as opposed to people who just learn to, I guess, cope and live with their autism as opposed to trying to find a cure for it. So I did not really I did not really view the book as having a poor representation of that. However, I am not autistic. I don't have any, close family or friends who are autistic, so that might be incorrect interpretation. I might be, giving it a pass on that. But overall, again, I just definitely liked the story a lot. But other than that, the other thing I didn't totally love is I did find the ending a little rushed right towards the end, unfortunately, but overall, it definitely did not ruin the book for me by any means, and I definitely really enjoyed this and recommend it. Next, I read The Defiant Heir by Melissa Caruso, and honestly, all of my beef with this book can be summed up with, love triangles, why? Like, that was it. I did not want a love triangle, and when it was introduced, I didn't think it was done well. Like, the first book in the series ended with the beginnings of a relationship between our main character, Amalia, and this one guy. And I was into it. At the end of the first book, I was like, alright, I can see where this goes. I'm here for that. And in this book, the amount of times we heard about the love triangle was entirely too high, given how underdeveloped the sides of the triangle were. As I said, the first guy was just the beginnings. Like, they kind of liked each other. They like kissed once, I think, but it wasn't like, they weren't like in love yet. They're beginning, and that's fine. The second problem, though, was not romantic. It just wasn't romantic. Like, really, obviously, it wasn't even like she wasn't into him, but he was pursuing her. They were courting for pure political reasons, and it was very clear that they were doing it for political alliances, political maneuverings and favors and stuff, but they weren't romantic towards each other, like, at all. So I was like, I feel like you could have talked about the impact of this platonic courting on the other relationship in a way that didn't just like hard lean into it as a love triangle, when I didn't really feel like it was, but they definitely talked about it like it was. It was like what I was seeing and what I was being told didn't quite match with those two. However, the rest of the book I thought was great. I thought it was a great entry into the series. I enjoyed it. We take our story to the neighboring empire to the north that we hear about in the first book, and we now are in, and so I liked that expanding of the world. We learn more about that empire and the people and kind of more about the conflict there. I enjoyed that a lot. The political courting half of the love triangle, the guy, was new in this book, and I really liked him as a character outside of the love triangle business. I thought he was an excellent addition to the story, and I really liked the exploration of the platonic relationship between our main character and her falcon. In this case, falcon being a human, not an actual bird. That's just what the magic users are called. I liked the exploration of their platonic relationship, and I enjoyed the kind of side love story going on with Zara and... oh, I cannot remember the other girl's name. Zara and the other girl. I did not write the girl's name down in my review. Unfortunately, I don't remember. Anyways, so definitely enjoy that, and I'm looking forward to finishing off the series. Okay, now we are moving on to my 4 5-star reads of the month. The first of which was a reread, and that was Unwind by Neal Shusterman, which I just gotta say, I think I read this book for the first time 9 years ago. And 9 years ago and today, I still think this is the creepiest cover ever. Like, I think I remember when I read it, I put a post-it note over it while I was carrying it around school. I was like, I cannot. And I still feel that way. This is such a creepy cover. Anyways, great book though. So this is the first book in a 4-book series, following this is like a future America in which there was this whole war fought, pro-choice versus pro-life war fought, and the resolution that was somehow a compromise was you can no longer abort children, but once they turn 13, between the ages of 13 and 17, you can unwind them. You can sign an order to unwind them, which means they get separated surgically and their body parts are like used as donors for other people. But like the way they do it, they're able to like use every part of the body. Like the technological advancements, they can use every piece of the body, and thus they never really die. They just live in an undivided state. And I guess that somehow satisfied the pro-choice side. I don't understand how this was the resolution that they came to pre-book, but that's not really the point. The point of the book is not how they came to that resolution. I had the same question when I read the Arc of the Sign trilogy, is how they came to their conclusion that this was the best solution. But anyways, so yeah, I don't really know why this was the solution they decided would work, but that's not really the point of the book. We're years later with this book. So this book follows three main characters. Connor, who is kind of a troubled child, and he is being unwound by his parents. I think he's like 16 at the point. Risa, who is a ward of the state, and she ends up being unwound because of budget cuts. They just kind of have to cut some kids, and she like just wasn't quite good enough to stay. And then Levi, who is a tithe, and so there's some religious sects in the book that take tithing, which is, giving 10% back to the church, to a next level, and that they have their 10th child to be tithed. And so this follows their story as their paths get intertwined as on their way to unwinding, as they escape in different ways and different levels of desire to escape. Yeah, I just really love this. I really loved it when I first read it. I thought it was just as good as the second time. Honestly, the backstory of this just as relevant in today's world as it was 9 years ago, or whenever this was published. I read it 9 years ago. I think it's actually an older book, though. I think the book came out in, 2007. Yeah, this was originally published in 2007. I just read it 9 years ago. So, yeah, I'm rereading this because this book is 4 books, and I never read the 4th one when it originally came out. Classic me. So I'm rereading the first 3 to get to the 4th one, and I'm really glad that I love this, and I'm definitely looking forward to finishing my reread of these. Next, I read Wicked and the Wallflower by Sarah MacLean. This is the first book in the Bare Knuckle Bastard series, and I loved this book. I was kind of surprised, just because the only Sarah MacLean book I read before was, a 4-star, so I just, wasn't expecting to go into this one loving it, because I'd also started this one before. I started this book in 2020, and then my library loan was up, and it was an ebook, so it just auto-returned, and I just, didn't feel compelled to, get it back out. I didn't dislike it. I was like, meh, I'll pick it up again one day. So after that, I just, didn't expect to, love it so much, but I did. It follows Felicity, who is kind of getting to spinster age, and she's kind of always been a wallflower, and she wants to marry a duke, and she also wants passion in her marriage, and so she ends up getting the help of Devil, who's one of the Bare Knuckle Bastards, to help her learn how to seduce the duke to get passion in their marriage, because she kind of ends up lying and shouting out one day at a party that she's engaged to him, and he just goes along with it. She's not really sure why, because they've never spoken. And Devil has his own kind of reasons for wanting to help her with the Duke, but in the course, they obviously end up falling in love as he's teaching her how to seduce someone, and so this is kind of the angle of Sex Pact that I enjoy, the, teaching you to seduce. I think it's because it's, feels less transactional and more feeling. There's more feelings involved when you're, multiple sessions of learning all the steps to seduction from first kiss to all the way, whereas the other one was just a one time and you walk away. So anyways, I adore this. I love their banter. So good. Top-notch banter is how you get me to love a romance book. And I just thought they were so great together. I devoured this mostly in one day, and I loved it. Next, I read Hook, Line, and Sinker by Tessa Bailey. This is the sequel to It Happened One Summer, which I loved last year, so I tried not to go into this one with too high of an expectation, because I was just because I love the first one doesn't mean the second one can't be good without me loving it. So we don't want to hold it the same standard, but here's the thing. I love this one too. So this one is a friends to lovers, although it's a little bit of a spin on that, because in this case they haven't been friends that long. It's the main heroine's sister from the first book and the hero's friend. So they met in the first book, and now it's less than a year later. It's been several months, and they've kind of been texting on and off while Hannah, the main character, has been back in Los Angeles, and he lives in the kind of crabbing town in Washington. And they've been kind of texting on and off, and they had some banter in the first book, but they definitely been keeping it friends, so not long friends, but definitely friends. And then Hannah ends up coming back to the town in Washington because the director she works for is using it as a filming location. So she ends up bunking with Fox, the main guy character, in his spare room. So they end up spending a lot of time together, and she has this crush on her boss, and so he kind of starts off kind of helping her, maybe, you know, try and make a move there, but they end up falling for each other instead. And I just loved this one. I really, really liked the way this book did Fox's character arc, because Fox is known as kind of like a rakish ladies man, and he kind of believes that's all he can be. Like, he doesn't believe he is good enough to be like a real boyfriend. He thinks he's not good enough for Hannah, and that if they get together, everyone will just like make comments, because people make comments to him all the time. I'll be like, oh, that girl you hooked up with, like kind of like nudge comments, because that's just like who he was for a while when he was younger. Like, that's what he did. He would like go to Seattle every weekend and hook up with girls, which was fine. But now that's like all the comments he gets, and he kind of doesn't live that life anymore. And so he's afraid that if he gets with Hannah, she'll get comments about it, and he doesn't want that for her. And so the way they did his arc of him kind of coming to the realization that he is good enough to be in a normal relationship was really, really well done, and kind of will push this into a 5-star, which is, I love the way the author handled his character. And I liked Hannah as well, not to like downplay her character at all. I definitely enjoyed her character and kind of her quest to try and get what she wants out of the industry she's in, because she kind of starts as just a musician, but she really likes music, and she really wants to be more on the music production side in movies. And I was really rooting for her, and I liked how her story with that ended up in the end. So yeah, this duology is so good. So good. And the last book I read last month was I Must Betray You by Ruta Sepetys, and this was so good. I've read 3 Ruta Sepetys books now, and I've really enjoyed all of them. So I think she's definitely becoming kind of an auto-buy author. I've definitely enjoyed them. And so this one is following a boy in the months leading up to the Romanian Revolution in 1989. And so this is a part of history that I really know nothing about. My boss is Romanian, and he lived in Romania while it was communist Romania, and I've kind of heard him draw up little like vignettes of story about his time in Romania in college, and then his time in Germany in a refugee camp, but I've never like gotten a full story because it just feels inappropriate to ask about that at work, you know? Not the place, it feels like. But so like seeing that she was doing it in Romanian, I was very intrigued by it, having heard little morsels from him, and that's kind of the only thing I ever had heard about this period of history is what I picked up from him. And so I was really intrigued to learn more. And so in this one we follow a boy who ends up getting blackmailed by kind of the Romanian government's secret police to be an informant for them on the various activities, and it deals a lot with his mental struggle with being an informant, because he's doing it to help get medicine for his sick grandfather. So like obviously that's sympathetic. Like I can completely sympathize with someone who wants to help their sick grandfather, but also he like is struggling with the feeling that he's helping at all. And it also deals a lot with him kind of realizing just how bad it is in Romania. They live in a very propagandized world. Like the government tells them what they tell them, and they don't really know what it's like outside Romania. Like they definitely don't think what they have, the way they're living, is like sunshine and rainbows. Like they definitely understand it's not amazing, but I don't think they realize just how bad it is compared to other countries. And he slowly starts to realize that kind of through his friendship with the American son of an American diplomat. And he starts to kind of see things about America that he was like, you guys eat have bananas, like just like these little things that really, as he starts to realize just how bad it is. And this all kind of culminates at the same time with the Romanian Revolution. So like his awakening is very much timed for him like joining in the initial like protests and stuff with the beginning of the Romanian Revolution. And so I love this. I thought the story was good. She used short chapters, which just made it into an absolute page turner. And I think I really learned a lot too. Like this book had me often stopping to like look up facts, and I enjoy it when historical fiction books do that, because that's like I like learning history, and so that's kind of why I read historical fictions. And so when it prompts me to go look up more, that's kind of what I enjoy. So yeah, I love this book. I would definitely recommend this to anyone who likes historical fiction. It was so good. So that was everything I read in the month of March. If you've read any of these, let me know what you thought. What were your favorite reads of the month? And I will see you in my next video.